Hi, I'm Kristen Amdahl. I'm a creative entrepreneur embracing every aspect of life with artistic intention. Join me as I share the way I live and all the tips and tricks along the way. Allow me to inspire you to do the same. Please like, share, or comment on my videos. I'd love to hear from you. And if you subscribe to my channel, you'll be first to know when there's something new. In this video, I want to show you how to do long tail or provisional cast on for knitting, and that's where you use both ends of your tail and your working yarn to create your cast on. It has a little bit of structure to it because you're using 2 strands of yarn in the cast on, and you're going to need to know how much yarn to start from. So you want to pull your tail yarn to about twice as long as your piece is going to be, give or take, and then work your slip knot at that point. I'm only going to cast on 10 stitches, so this is probably longer than I need, but it's just pointing out to you that you do need to have a lengthy piece of yarn before you begin your slip knot. So we're going to wrap the yarn around 2 fingers, pull a loop through, and then you're going to put that loop onto your knitting needle. I'm using circulars, so that means putting it on one end of our knitting needles. And now working with the tail yarn in front and the working yarn out further away from you, you want to wrap your thumb around the tail and your working yarn around your first finger. And as you pull a loop through the loop on the thumb, as you put the needle in the loop on your thumb, instead of just sliding that onto your working yarn like we did in the back loop, we're going to pull that working yarn through the loop on our thumb and then let it go. So it's kind of like adding a step to the back loop cast on that we did previously. We're going to pull our hook through the loop on our thumb like in back loop cast on, but instead of just sliding it onto the right hand needle, now we're going to pull a loop of our working yarn through the tail loop. And I'm going to pretend like our pattern calls for cast on 10 stitches in provisional or long tail cast on and show you how to do that really slowly. This type of cast on does not have a lot of stretch to it, which could either be good or bad depending on the type of project you're making. It doesn't have a whole lot of stretch to it. It also does not, it's not something that you can easily do in the middle of a project like for a buttonhole, because you do need a secondary piece of yarn. So unless you're pulling in a scrap piece of yarn to create stitches this way, it isn't the technique I would generally recommend for buttonholes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So there we have 10 stitches cast onto our knitting needles with worsted weight yarn in long tail or provisional cast on. Next I want to show you what this looks like in fingering weight yarn, which is what you would do if you were working with lace or some other fine project. We're going to make sure we have a really long tail again, and we're going to wrap a slip knot around our fingers like that. Slide it onto our knitting needle. And then once again with our, whoops, I grabbed my yarn, and then we'll do that again. So wrap the yarn around 2 fingers, pull a loop of your tail through the loop on your fingers and cinch it closed onto your knitting needles. That slip knot counts as your first stitch. Now with your tail in front and your working yarn further out, we're going to wrap the tail around our thumb and insert your knitting needle into the loop on your thumb to then grab a loop of the working yarn and pull it through the loop and cinch it onto the needles. And there you go. There's 10 stitches with provisional cast on fingering weight yarn.